Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
First of all, he killed Leslie because she could identify him. Okay, the reason why he started bringing him home was because he wasn't satisfied with just like raping them and leaving. He wanted to have it over and over and over again.
Did you kill Elizabeth Bain on June the 19th, 1990?
Well, it's a loaded question. I mean, are we going to go back and go through the time sequence of what happened in my life? I mean, I could just give a yes or no answer, but, you know, there's a lot of issues about that.
Right.
You know, Karla's in my role, who did what, where, when. This is why I said, did you guys, you know, go down there to get a polygraph to see if she was telling the truth? Like, why didn't Bevan do it in the first place?
The trajectory of a marriage is to ensure that each party is gracefully compatible to ensure a long and happy marriage. But the union between Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka was a deadly one from the start. Two psychopaths got married and rained hell on the suburbs of Toronto, working together to lure, torture, rape, and murder adolescent girls for years. Paul Bernardo was born on August 27, 1964, in Ontario, Canada, to Kenneth and Marilyn Bernardo, and was the last of 3 children. The Bernardo family was pretty well off financially and seemed quite normal on the outside. However, in the year of 1975, Kenneth Bernardo, Paul's father, was charged with child molestation, and there were even rumors that he had molested his very own daughter. With this rampant turn of events in his childhood, Paul did not seem affected by this at all, and observers recalled him as being always happy and a young boy who smiled a lot. When Paul was 15, his mother Marilyn revealed to him that he was the result of an extramarital affair with a former boyfriend, and this struck a change in Paul's behavior. He began to refer to his mother as a slob and a whore, and she began to call him a bastard. After graduating from high school, Paul fell into the habit of going to bars, lying to women in order to engage in sexual activities with them, humiliating and beating them after the ordeal. Between the ages of 19 and 21, Paul dated many women, but was unable to keep a relationship long enough because of his abusive nature and strange sexual preferences. In 1987, Paul graduated from the University of Toronto, and after dating a young woman by the name of Jennifer Thompson, who threatened to go to the police, his dating life started to slow down. This was the beginning of something morbid. On May 4, 1987, Paul committed his first rape of a 21-year-old at a bus stop. Just 10 days later, he committed his second rape of a 19-year-old in front of her house. And in July, Paul attempted his third rape of a young woman at a bus stop. These attacks included beatings, intense verbal abuse, and dire threats to discourage victims from going to police. In October, Bernardo met a slim, platinum blonde-haired 17-year-old Karla Homolka in a Howard Johnson hotel, and that night, Paul and Karla engaged in sex. Paul collected Karla's phone number and address, which was unlike him when it came to one-night stands. Karla Leanne Homolka was born to Dorothy and Carol Homolka in Ontario on May 4, 1970, and was the eldest of 3 siblings. Homolka seemed like a normal child. She was pretty, popular, and loved by everyone around her. At the age of 12, Karla started reading Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, and became obsessed with crime. As she became older, she grew harsher in her ways, and enjoyed scaring her friends. She even became interested in the occult and often called spirits with her friends. During high school days, she was bold and did not hesitate to mingle with the opposite sex and experience with drugs. She would often fantasize about weird situations related to death, and once attempted to cut herself with a knife. Her love for animals led her to work at a vet's office. She met Paul Bernardo at a pet convention at the Howard Johnson Hotel, where the both of them immediately hit it off. Paul was very fond of Karla, and as the both of them shared similar sadistic fantasies which made them bond even more. Granted that they had never found a partner who shared such thing. Paul started to control every aspect of Karla's life, telling her what to wear, how to style her hair, and what to eat. He would often verbally abuse her about her weight and appearance. Paul became upset with Karla when he found out that she was not a virgin, but still remained interested in her. Over the course of their relationship, Karla allowed Paul to rape other women when he had asked about it, but it didn't seem like she would even have a choice because of his controlling nature. Soon after, Karla began helping Paul lure young girls. He was dubbed the Scarborough Rapist. The two got engaged in 1989, and Bernardo grew bored of his sexual relationship with Homolka and often teased her about being used goods because she wasn't a virgin. Bernardo soon became obsessed with Homolka's younger sister Tammy and demanded that Tammy not have sex with any guy. Karla encouraged this and decided to offer the virginity of her 15-year-old sister to Paul as a Christmas gift. The couple made plans to drug and rape Tammy. On December 23, 1990, the couple lured Tammy to the basement while Tammy and Karla's parents slept upstairs. They served Tammy drinks spiked with halcyon, then used a rag with halothane on it to keep Tammy unconscious. During the molestation that was videotaped by Karla, Tammy vomited and choked on her own vomit, leading to her death. Instead of helping her, they called authorities, dressed her, and put her back into her own bed. The drugs in her system were overlooked, and the case was classified as an accidental death. Bernardo was unhappy with Tammy's death and blamed Homolka for it. As a present, Homolka invited 15-year-old Jane Doe to a girls' night out, where the couple would drug and rape her, while taking turns recording it. Leslie Mahaffy, a 14-year-old who had been locked out of her house for a missing curfew, was blindfolded and placed in the car by Paul. Soon they tortured and raped her, while videotaping the young girl pleading for her life. Paul strangled her to death with an electrical cord, and the couple decided to cut her body into pieces with a saw, put her body in cement, and dumped it in Lake Gibson. Paul and Karla married on June 29, 1991, the very same day a couple canoeing in Lake Gibson discovered concrete blocks containing human body parts in the water. Leslie was identified, and while this discovery rocked citizens, the killers enjoyed an elaborate wedding ceremony, which included their entrance in a white horse-drawn carriage. A year later, the couple struck again. The couple's next victim was 15-year-old Kristen French, who was abducted from a church parking lot as she walked home from school. Karla asked the young teen for directions and got out of the car, showing her a map, while her husband Paul snuck up behind Kristen with a knife, forcing her into the car. They kept her as a sex slave for days, torturing and raping her. Kristen was murdered by Bernardo with the same electrical cord used to kill Leslie. The body was left in Karla's and Bernardo's home, while they paid a visit to Karla's parents' house for dinner. Later, Paul disposed of the body in a dumpster in Burlington. Her body was battered and her hair partially shaved. After Kristen's body was discovered, a friend of Paul Bernardo noticed the similarities between Paul and the rapist profile and went to the police. The police questioned Paul about where he was on the nights of the two kidnappings. DNA samples were taken, but he was not considered high on the list of suspects. A few months later, Jane Doe confronted both Paul and Karla about being forced to have sex with Paul, and a few days later, Karla was brutally beaten with a flashlight by Bernardo, causing severe facial bruising. When Karla's parents found out about what Paul had did to her, they took her out of the house to be away from Paul. However, she returned to recover the videotapes. Paul was arrested and charged with assault with a weapon and released on bail. The two separated because of this physical abuse. Paul was arrested once again for the rapes and murders. Karla was also arrested a few days later and agreed to testify against Paul in return for a reduced sentence and arranged for a plea bargain. Karla pleaded guilty to 2 counts of manslaughter for the murders of Leslie and Kristen and served 12 years behind bars. Such a short sentence caused public outrage. Shortly after Karla's conviction, Tammy's body was exhumed, and authorities concluded that she had been murdered. Bernardo was charged with manslaughter and sexual assault for Tammy's homicide. The incriminating tapes weren't handed over to authorities until September 22, 1994. The tapes were used against Bernardo, who had confessed to being the Scarborough rapist, but as they were examined, Homolka's willing participation in the murders became clear in the hours of footage. Her depravity was highlighted in a particular video labeled Karla, Tammy, and Me, where Karla, dressed as her dead sister, had sex on Tammy's bed while praising Bernardo for taking her virginity. Another segment showed the pair engaged in sexual activity while Bernardo held Tammy's photo. By the time the videotapes became known to the court, the deal had already been struck with Homolka, and since she had fulfilled her end of the bargain by providing information and testifying against Bernardo, the courts declined to reopen her case. After serving 12 years, Karla Homolka was released from prison in 2005 at the age of 35, while Paul Bernardo remained in prison and was denied parole in 2021.